Hey everyone. So, for many of you, you may know or have this perception that as far as a demo versus scout matchup goes, that scout absolutely has the upper hand. Scout is a check to demo, if not a counter completely. And there's definitely truth to this. There's a reason why people say this. However, the overall scout versus demo matchup has a lot more nuance to it. And I kind of want to go into that and explain, how to play this matchup as a demo, as well as maybe cover some of the scout versus demo interactions that aren't just a team fight environment or a 1v1 kind of environment, but actually overall game environment. So, where to get started? I think a good place to get started is kind of just with demo and scout and how they excel in combat. So demo, of course, just deals a ton of damage. Stickies and pipes all do a lot of damage themselves, enough to potentially even two-shot like most classes. And the fact that they can kind of be chained together and burst together means that demo has a really high burst damage potential as well. And for a player who's not paying attention, they can just die to a demo before even necessarily realizing that they're in danger or about to take damage, even in like a non-sticky trap kind of context. That being said, demo is extremely projectile dependent, and by extremely I mean exclusively. So your ability to deal damage is going to require some amount of prediction as far as your enemy's movement goes. Although in certain ranges, this element of prediction starts to fall off, meaning you can shoot reliable shots, usually with stickies in this context. You can shoot reliable shots that the other player can't necessarily avoid. The same thing applies to like rockets, for example, which are another projectile, but at certain ranges, they are effectively undodgeable if you aim them correctly. So yeah, that is kind of where demo stands. And I should mention that that really effective range for demo tends to be mid-range. At long range, demo is not exceptional, and especially like really long ranges, your pipes are going to be much less effective, generally speaking, unless you're using lock, I suppose. But even then, at a long range, lock is going to be less effective than at like a mid-range or a close range even. And in some cases, your pipes won't even reach. And also, stickies are going to take a lot longer to charge. And again, just by nature of them being projectiles, going to be easier to avoid. The other players are going to have much more reaction time to dodge based on that longer range. But overall, you're kind of comfy because honestly, a demo's long range output is still better than most other classes, like except the sniper. So it's not terrible. And then mid-range, you're super comfy. That's where like your sticky pipe potential opens up. That's where your projectiles are a lot harder to dodge, and you get some damage ramp up, or rather, not damage ramp up, but less damage fall off. So your stickies might be doing, rather than like 50s or even 60 from range if you're really beaming them with the sticky, you're going to be looking more in like the 80 kind of damage range, which is a lot more. So yeah. But then when you get into close range, it's a little sketchier because of a couple of reasons. So for starters, your stickies have an arm time, meaning that from close range, rather than your opponent has the same amount of time to react, in the sense that, they can see where you're shooting your sticky, and what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know, just because the actual sticky itself takes time to become active, means that you do rely a lot on prediction at close range for where an enemy might be, especially since overall characters move quite fast in TF2. I know I've covered this point before, but you look at a game like Counter-Strike, which isn't, you don't think you move around exceptionally slow or anything, but I think even with a knife out, you move like at soldier walking speed, which in TF2 is like excruciatingly slow. Shout out to all the heavy mains out there, I guess. I don't know how you do it. And yeah, scout extremely fast, so in very close range, you're not going to have nearly as much success. Or you're still going to have to predict a lot for where the enemy team or enemy player is going to move, because they can be quite fast and your stickies take some time to arm. That being said, as well, you know, self-damage is absolutely a consideration in very close ranges. And as a demo, you can deal a lot of damage to the other team, but you can deal a lot of damage to yourself. So that's a concern. Now, that being said, it's not all doom and gloom at close range, because pipes are definitely easier to hit and in some cases just impossible to miss, so long as you aim correctly. And stickies also have considerable damage ramp up. And in certain ranges, stickies can actually outperform pipes in damage, doing over 100. So there's definitely some benefits to demo at close range, but those aren't the encounters you're really going to be looking for. It's just some nice consolation points, I suppose. All right, taking a sip of water. And one last thing that I'll mention before I move on to Scout is that Demo is uniquely equipped as maybe the only class that is as effective, if not maybe even slightly more effective, at shooting players off of high ground. Normally, in TF2, high ground is a massive advantage, and even against a demo, it still is an advantage because, well, let's look at the different classes, right? So a soldier, you have splash damage. You'd much rather be shooting down at a target that even if you miss, you're getting splash damage on. And Scout, even though Scout doesn't have splash damage, not only is high ground really nice for denying bombs, which is a major component of Scout in a 6's setting, but you also still have some high ground advantage, because if you peek over that corner, only your head is sticking out versus you get to see the enemy's entire body. So there is still some advantage to high ground in that sense. Not to mention the fact that you're generally safer because, if you're playing against a soldier, for example, they need to hit an upwards direct on you rather than being able to get splash damage on you, which absolutely favors you. So yeah, high ground, definitely important. But that being said, Demo uniquely equipped to deny high ground, because not only is the arcier projectiles oftentimes really well equipped to just cover the entirety of high ground, but because your stickies can just det whenever you want, it makes it so that, you are the primary high ground denying class. And if there is a player that you need to get off of high ground, then your main two ways of doing it is, number one, first and foremost, just have your demo spam it. And that's what most teams are going to do most of the time. But number two could be like have a soldier bomb that target off the high ground. That's also a possibility. But those are the main two ways. So with that out of the way, kind of an introduction to Demo and what he can do, let's talk about Scout. So Scout is maybe people regard Scout as the best class in 6's or the best combat class, which might be the topic of its own video someday. But Scout is absolutely favored to win most 1v1s. What's really nice about Scout is that, overall in 6's, mobility is extremely important. And it's actually one of the primary limiting factors behind a lot of otherwise really powerful off classes, such as like an engineer or a pyro, being a lot less useful in a 6's setting, is just because mobility, both macro mobility in the sense that you're traversing the map quickly, as well as the kind of micro mobility, as in being able to move around quickly in a isolated area for a fight. They're both very important, and Scout kind of excels at both. What's really unique about Scout is that unlike a soldier, and especially a demo, where mobility comes at the cost of health, as in you need to either rocket jump or sticky jump and take some damage to do so, in addition to fall damage and whatnot. Scout, that's just not the case, and you can move basically completely freely, which is why, a 1 HP Scout can be absolutely brutal to deal with if you don't have any hit scan damage to clean that kill up, because you need to confirm a rocket on them or something, and Scouts can output a lot of damage as well. So by virtue of the fact that the class can deal a lot of damage, and the class is good at avoiding damage as well because of that mobility, this means that for 1v1 engagements, or even just team fights in general, Scout is not only exceptional at cleaning up kills, or at least like confirming just a little bit of damage on a player that's weak, but if a 1v1 fight goes on long enough, then the Scout, the Scout can kind of just win off of dealing ship damage to the other player while not taking damage themselves. So against a demo or against a soldier, a Scout just, all they have to do is just dodge the damage and they will win that fight long term. So yeah, and also, you know, I already mentioned it, but Scout being that one class that uses hit scan in a full-time 6's setting, which is unique. Hit scan is definitely far more reliable than projectiles. However, it does come at a general damage cost. This is quite generally speaking, because Scout, again, has extremely high damage output, which we'll talk about ranges in a moment. But lack of splash damage as well is another thing. So Scout is very much better at shooting people, like individuals, compared to like splash damage, which is better at, you know, holding chokes and spreading damage a lot of the time. So as far as ranges go, Scout, of course, excels at close range. Mid-range is not terrible for many engagements because, again, that kind of propensity of being able to just chip players down while avoiding all of their damage, you'll win that fight long term. So that can be an option against like a soldier, for example. We'll talk about the nuances of range in the Scout v Demo matchup specifically later on. But close range Scout really excels because of a couple reasons. So for starters, your scattergun does more damage. And this is where like meat shots become a thing. And being able to deal like 100 damage per shot as a Scout is an insanely fast damage output. And you can just two-shot players, which is wonderful. And speaking of two-shotting players, aiming your scattergun is a lot easier when you're close range. And in fact, like, you don't even necessarily have to move your mouse so much because you are faster than all the other classes, meaning you can even use your movement to line up your crosshair to where they are. And especially against a relatively slower class like a demo, this is going to be a lot easier to do. So in close range, shots are much easier to hit and they do much higher damage. So Scouts definitely like to, if they're trying to just kill a guy as fast as possible, they like to get really, really close to do so. So Scout can have like multiple kind of modes for how they're trying to kill players, because you can be kind of hanging back and focusing on dodging spam, playing the high ground and stuff like that, and just winning through attrition. But you can very much just get in their face and try and kill them right then and there. What else to mention for the Scout class? Long range definitely can't do too much. You just rely on like pistol accuracy, which is notoriously inconsistent. But again, you know, not many classes have good long range capabilities. So yeah. So I think that's all our bases covered. So for those of you still awake by now, let us kind of talk a bit about the Demo versus Scout matchup. And we can begin with a just Demo versus Scout in a fight, right? You know, an MGE situation, if you will. Just where both players are trying to kill each other. And this is a situation in which the Scout absolutely has the upper hand. So for starters, Scout's speed makes it so that landing projectiles on them requires a lot more prediction at more ranges, which just makes things generally more difficult, believe it or not. So it can be much more difficult to land damage on a Scout, and especially since they can kind of like dance around, it becomes easier for them to close the gap. So usually a good starting option against a Scout is to make sure that they can't just instantly close the gap and kill you. And this is where I like to call it like a safety sticky, comes into play. A good start, basically as a demo, and I talked about this in the when to use like stickies versus pipe video that I think is on the second channel or something. But you basically want to always start your engagements with a sticky. No matter what, because stickies have that arm time, meaning the sooner you shoot a sticky, the sooner you can det that sticky. So your capability of like sticky piping a player, for example, and bursting down their entire health bar and killing them instantly is way more likely when you start off with a sticky than a pipe, because they kind of line up together to where when you're shooting your pipe, the sticky's arm, or yeah, his armed and deadable. Versus if you shot your pipe first, then the pipe hits, and then you have to switch to your sticks, and then they can like react to that in time. You understand what I'm saying. Starting off your engagements with a sticky is a generally good idea. Now, a common practice that you see demos do is kind of that safety sticky, where that first sticky they shoot is going to be somewhere between them and who they're fighting, in meaning that that player can't just immediately rush them down. Because again, remember, demos don't like taking these close range engagements. It's overall less advantageous for you, and you much prefer playing that kind of mid-range. So by starting off with that sticky just on the ground somewhere between you and the target, in this case a scout, you are effectively preventing them from just walking forward. And you are forcing them into that mode where they kind of have to play the range. They might still be looking for openings to get in. So again, you know, that counterplay, you have to try to actually, you know, see those openings as they might arise and make sure that you're positioning yourself and positioning your stickies and pipes and whatnot in such a way that they can't close the gap like that. Definitely something to look out for. But starting off with that safety sticky is a good idea. What else? What else? I'm trying to think. Yeah, scouts are going to try and close the gap, so you want to look out for that. Yeah, so you definitely want to aim to play at that kind of mid-range where you're more effective, just because it's a lot easier to get damage on the scouts. And one thing that kind of keeps this matchup more balanced than otherwise is the fact that Demo deals so much damage and Scout has such low HP. So because of that fact, yes, it's going to be much harder to land shots, but those shots are going to mean a lot more. Where if that scout is not buffed, let's say it's like after a mid-fight or something, which when you will and will not even want to take engagements with a scout, we'll talk about. But yeah, being able to hit a scout for like a 70 damage sticky, if they're not buffed and not getting healed, that is half their health. So you only need to do that twice and they're dead. So Demo can deal a lot of damage, and Scout being a much frailer class makes that a lot better, generally speaking. So... man, there was... I knew what I wanted to talk... Yeah. Another thing to talk about is just when it comes to predicting. Of course, this is going to depend on the scout you're playing. And in some cases, you will be able to kind of pick up on their habits and what they want to do. Whether it be a scout that just tries to rush you down and hit you for as much damage as possible, in which case, a lot of the time, they are actually pretty vulnerable to just a sticky pipe. Because they're just hoping to kill you before you can kill them. But if you know their scout is good about playing high ground and whatnot, then where to place your sticky should be informed by that. Because actually shooting at the height is generally a good idea. And when I say the height, I mean like micro height. So actually a fantastic example. Oops. A fantastic... that's the wrong thing. Man, I'm going to look over there in a moment, I'm sure. So a fantastic example here on Snakewater, right? Snakewater second. Not uncommon whatsoever to be fighting a scout here. And you can notice that a scout can very easily be on bats, for example. But like these doors and whatnot are pretty intuitive to shoot at. But let's say a scout is like running along the ground here. Well, where you might want to shoot at is some of this micro height. So the crates here is a fantastic thing and a place that scouts are absolutely going to want to jump to if they're trying to avoid splash damage. Likewise, the train here. So being able to shoot at those places, Scout will very often route to them, and that's a lot easier to get damage on. This is especially true in the case where it's not just like a 1v1, but a Scout is like maybe trying to get a salvage kill on a medic because he's caught after you guys push out a blast. A situation like that, where there might be a demo and a soldier fighting him, as well as like a scout or something, in which case they are very much trying to not instantly die, and playing that height is just even more important for them. Being able to shoot that kind of micro high ground that they might try and use moment by moment is really effective. And that generally applies to the scout versus demo matchup, being able to understand where the scout's trying to go and account for that. Now, all that being said, these are mere stopgaps, and Scout absolutely has the upper hand in direct combat with a demo. And if you can, it's usually a good idea to avoid like taking 1v1s with a Scout, especially if you're alone. Demo thrives when he's kind of playing with teammates and kind of has bodyguards to be able to kill those kind of players, those bombing soldiers that are trying to kill the demo, those scouts that are trying to kill the demo and whatnot. Demo's quite good at dealing a lot of damage, but not good whatsoever at closing out kills. And in fact, like, stickies tend to be your most reliable tool to do so, and that kind of says a lot, because stickies can do a lot of things. And they are generally reliable in those, mid to close ranges. But having to rely on a projectile weapon with a arm time in order to close out kills is definitely not the most desirable thing. It's not hit scan, it's not on-demand splash damage like rockets, and that can definitely leave you wanting. So, yeah. Demo very much loves to be around teammates where, if you can just pipe a scout, that means that he's all but dead to your own pocket scout, and you don't have to worry about having to close out that kill, which might be difficult against a scout's movement. And overall, trying to avoid those engagements where you might lose is a good idea. Yeah, you can use your own judgment as far as when to be, taking those fights and whatnot. But generally speaking, you don't have to take every fight, and you should be intelligent about the ones you do, because you want to be winning the fights you take. And a good way to do that is not only by being a better player, but also taking the fights that you expect to win, and not the ones you don't expect to. So, with that out of the way, that's Demo versus Scout in a strict DM sense. Scout absolutely has the upper hand. Demo has some tricks like shooting that micro height and that kind of safety sticky, or just having the conscious idea of trying to zone out that scout to keep them in your optimal DM range rather than theirs. But overall, it's absolutely Scout favored because, again, Scout is the strongest 1v1 and just strongest DM class, generally speaking, in sixes. So, that's not all of the interactions that Scout and Demo have. And in fact, I wonder if it's going to happen on this mid. You can see I just walk forward, and that Scout is absolutely destroyed. It was trying to play height to deny the bombs, and is now dead, because I just walked forward. They couldn't really do much about that, and I just hit them with a giant sticky. Well, giant's maybe not the right word, but a solid sticky. And got them off of the height, chunked their health, and they get cleaned up by a bomb. This kind of interaction is not uncommon whatsoever, and in a macro game sense, Demo can be really, really difficult for scouts to deal with for a multitude of reasons. So outside of just a 1v1, DM scenario, it's not rare whatsoever for a pocket scout to be one of the largest recipients of a demo's damage, because their role usually entails that they have to be the one taking space first through doorways or just after their pocket soldier. But in a lot of cases, for a lot of like dry pushes and just space making and taking in general, pocket soldier might go a different door than the combo. A close by door, but a different one nonetheless. So a pocket scout's going to be that first one through, meaning they're going to be drawing a lot of that early spam damage, and also they're going to be vulnerable to traps in many cases. Scouts are extremely vulnerable trap targets because not only does their lower health mean that traps that might not kill like a full buff demo or a buff soldier is absolutely going to kill even a buff scout, but also they just have to risk them more often. And this is another case of like, yes, there's all sorts of just super sneaky, sticky traps you can set that, people aren't going to expect and can get like nice cheeky kills and whatever. But Old Reliable is absolutely just going to be predicting what door they're going to pressure and having a trap on that, and then just trusting your reaction time to dead on the scout that goes through. Because a lot of the time you're going to risk that as the team pushing. Someone has to clear the traps at some point. A scout is quick. A scout is generally more expendable than like a demo is, or especially like a medic. So having a scout clear that and be that first one through is a good idea, as well as like scout is the guy that's going to be primarily shooting the bomb that's going to come when you're trying to get through the door and stuff like that. So by virtue of the fact that scout is usually one of the first ones to take this space, means that as a demo, you can absolutely make the other team's pocket scout's life a living hell just by spamming the crap out of them when they try and get through a door, killing them with traps, all sorts of things, because they are absolutely going to want to be holding W for the benefit of their team, and you as a demo are uniquely equipped to punish that. So because of that, demo can absolutely make a scout's life very, very difficult, and in many senses can counter scouts in certain situations. A big one being just scouts on high ground, on like a mid fight, for example, like the example we saw just a moment ago, where a scout absolutely wants to be on the high ground for a multitude of reasons, one of which being that, you know, the primary one for that matter, being that you want to deny the other team's bombs if they bomb. You don't want to just be vulnerable to that and lose the mid because their bombs were successful. So as a scout, you want to be on the high ground where you're more effective at denying that bomb, and you're generally safer. But as a demo, again, uniquely equipped to deny that high ground. Scout's low HP means if you can get a hefty sticky onto a scout just once, then already that scout is forced off of the height. Otherwise, they might just die and they have to re-heal, and suddenly that gives a golden opportunity for your soldiers to be bombing in kind of unchecked and, again, just way more successful. And there's a lot of examples of this. So, while, yes, in a strict kind of 1v1 DM sense, and not even necessarily 1v1, like a scout just getting the jump on a demo, even with his team around, if you're very close, you can output so much damage, and this demo can't do too much about it. They just need help. So in this DM sense, scouts are really, really strong about, against demos. But in a grander team, or grander game sense, it's not so simple. And demos can actually do a lot to challenge and to disrupt scouts. One other thing that I failed to mention earlier is scouts are uniquely equipped with the ability to destroy stickies, which is another kind of check they have against demos. Because, yeah, they're really the only class that reliably runs hit scan in a 6's setting. So they're the only class that can just destroy a sticky straight up without knocking it around. I suppose every class does have melee weapons, which if you don't know, a melee hit will destroy a sticky bomb, which is funny. And actually, that's why I have this named what it is. But anyway, yeah, so that doesn't come into play in a DM sense super often necessarily. Most of the time it's just for clearing traps and clearing carpets and just making space for your team, which again, scouts are uniquely valuable for. But it can come into play in that kind of, 1v1 fight scenario. Because if you, for example, put down that safety sticky and the other scout shoots it, well, you no longer have that safety anymore. And whatever other sticks you were trying to shoot, trying to kind of spin the web to ensnare the scout so that they have no other places to go and are forced to take at least one sticky's det worth of damage. In many cases, you can, what's the word I'm looking for? Ensnare them in such a sense that you can land an easier pipe on them and maybe sticky pipe. All the stuff that you're looking for when you're trying to, have... just trying to control area, right, to get damage on the scout to win the fight. When that's going on, if the other scout can, in the moment, clear your sticky, which can be kind of difficult to do, then that's a big problem. And you definitely need to be cognizant of the fact that they might be able to clear that. Another thing which scouts can do is, well, as a demo, sticky jumping is notoriously unreliable because any amount of splash damage you take just juggles your sticky and knocks it away, so you can't really jump off of it reliably anymore. And likewise, your stickies can be shot and destroyed by a scout before they're armed, and that's a big deal. Because you'll see in many cases, like an invite demo will be caught to an Uber trying to jump out, and the scout just shoots the sticky, so they just jump, but there's no sticky to debt. So they just are suspended there. Very, very morally questionable for scouts to be doing that. I absolutely hate it, but again, another case of that ability to destroy stickies definitely being a quite powerful tool in the right hands for a scout. I don't know if there's anything else as far as the scout versus demo matchup I have to talk about. Yeah, I think that pretty much wraps things up. Just generally how to think about it, how to play it, and kind of the nuances therein. Because, again, it is not as simple as Scout just counters Demo, and you should be avoiding every fight with a Scout that you can. There's definitely a lot that Demos can do against Scouts, but it's more in this, it's not just a strict DM sense, but more in a team sense and gameplay, just overarching gameplay sense, where, you know, you are, you have your own tools in order to deal with scouts and deal a lot of damage to scouts, so it's just a matter of mitigating those losses, or mitigating those situations that you're expected to lose, while being able to capitalize on those situations in which you have the upper hand. Just normal competitive stuff when you're trying to win, I guess. But anyway, that's all I have to talk about today. Oh, look, it perfectly coincided with the demo ending here. That's perfect. Hope you guys enjoyed, and see you all next time.